What's up, guys? Welcome to Monday Reflections. Hey, listen. If you're new here, every Monday I make these videos called Monday Reflections, and it's just a recap of what I learned at my home church here in Nashville, Avenue South. So I just like to share what I learned from Pastor Aaron Bryant. He's the head pastor there, just in hopes that maybe it's something that you as well can think about for the week and is encouraging to you. So if you're new here, make sure you subscribe. After you subscribe, hit the notification button and you'll be notified, probably via email, of when these videos are posted. Anywho, so yesterday at Avenue South, we were back in Genesis. So we're in a series called Sacrificial Love, and we were in the same chapter as we were last week, Genesis chapter 2, verse 22 through 24. All right, and in this scripture we see where Eve is created out of Adam. She was taken out of his flesh. It says in 23, "This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh, and she shall be called woman." And then it goes on to say, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." So man, woman, one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked, but they weren't ashamed. And the overall theme of this scripture, God created marriage to demonstrate the gospel. And Pastor Aaron pulled out the blueprints from the church, the original blueprints for the church, the structural blueprints, and he had the electrical blueprints. The structural blueprints were not as worn as the electrical, which signifies that, hey, people have come and opened them up and closed them and come and opened them up and closed them multiple times. Rather than this thick paper texture, it was more like a cloth. And so he used that model as a representation of the Bible and this scripture being our blueprint for how relationships work. We should go back to it time and time again to be reminded of how relationships work. Our Bibles should look like that. They should be tattered and worn and torn. And as we talked about last week, you and I, we are hardwired for relationships. It's not good for man to be alone. A prime example of where we see this demonstrated is in the local church. With that, you have community groups, Bible reading groups. We have that at Avenue South. Ministry teams that go and serve together, and that's how we see this demonstrated. Oftentimes, you've got people that might say, well, I can be a lover of Jesus, I can have a relationship with God, but not go to church. I don't have to be involved. And that's right, you can. You can have a relationship with God and be a hermit, a loner, whatever you want to call it, but it's not good to be alone. And God's intention was for us to be involved with other believers, which is the local church. And when we're not involved, we rob ourselves from being known and knowing others and having that relationship with other people. We believe that it is critical to be in relationship with other people that are on mission by God. We're all on one mission to bring non-believers to the throne of God so that they can have a relationship with Him. That's our mission. And so point number one from yesterday is that God's intention was for us in relationships to demonstrate the gospel. And if you look in Genesis, I think it was 23, man shall leave his parents, and woman shall leave her parents, and they shall become one flesh. This is a representation of the gospel. God descended from His throne to bring His people back to God. But Adam and Eve, they were co-equals, but they had separate distinction. One was a male, one was a female. And with that, there's biological differences, there's emotional differences, there's physical differences. By this marriage, they were transformed from their individuality into this union. What this symbolizes is that there is a relationship individually between them and God, but now something new has come about. Not just their individual relationships with God, but their relationship together with God. And this was something that hadn't existed before. And then point number two from yesterday is that we live in a post-Genesis chapter 3 world. This is the fall of man. As a result, our lives and all of our relationships are affected by sin. And we see that through the disobedience of Adam and Eve. And now there's baggage and brokenness and sin in all of our relationships. But the solution is the relationship that we have with God, the covenant relationship that we have with God. And that's a covenant relationship on God's part in that He says He'll never leave us, He'll never forsake us, He's always for us, and that is inseparable. Your husband may say, hey, I'll never leave you or forsake you in his vows, but 15 years down the road, you're divorced. Where does that leave you? But that's not what this relationship with God is. This is a permanent covenant with God and His people. And so we have that foundation, that covenant relationship with God. This is where we build these other relationships with all of the other people in our lives, our best friends, our parents, our wives and husbands. And this is where we draw our strength to maintain these relationships. It's not from what I have within me to be able to be the best husband I can be, or the best father I can be, or best friend I can be. It's from this foundational relationship with God that I draw my strength, so that those relationships can be sustainable and healthy. So everything that we've talked about, all I've said, this is seen in the example of God and his people. God and his love for us. You have Jesus, he is the groom, you and I, we are the bride, and God sent his only son to come and die for us, sacrificial love, so that we could be brought back into communion with God. So you've got us, we are broken, we are sinful, we have baggage, there's a lot of stuff wrong. And Jesus steps in and covers us with his perfect, sinless reputation. And now all God sees is Jesus. And we have this relationship with God because of Jesus. Anyways, okay, so final thought. Of all the relationships that God could have chosen to give us as the framework for how relationships work, he gave us marriage because it is the one relationship that is as close to a mirror image of God and his sacrificial love for us. And that's how marriage it should be. It should be sacrificial. And just like marriage, all other relationships should point us and other people back to God. Okay, I think that's it. Is that everything? Yeah, that's all that I have for you today. So make sure, if you have any questions or comments, you comment below. Let me know. Let's have a chat. And other than that, we'll see you next week. Peace.